Today, the E-Revo is getting some new upgrades. What's going on, guys? Josh here at Traxxas, and in today's video, I'm going to be upgrading the 1/16 E-Revo's front and rear bumpers to the Summit bumpers right here. The reason why I'm doing this is because I never really liked the look of the stock bumpers, plus these are going to offer a lot more protection, and they just fit the look of this body, I think, a lot better. And then the rear bumper is just gonna bolt in perfectly right there, and it's gonna look really good. Now, when I install the front bumper, I can't just put it into the factory holes because that's about where it would sit, and it just looks way too high up in my opinion. Basically covers the whole front of the body there. So I'm gonna have to drill 2 new holes right here and then screw it in that way, so then it sits more like in this spot right here instead of all the way up here. And to get it down more, I may have to trim this piece of the skid plate right here a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see for that. And in addition to the front and rear bumpers, I'm also going to be installing this light kit that I have laying around. This is an axial light kit for one of the crawlers. It has 4 LED lights in the front and 2 in the back, and these Summit bumpers actually have light buckets built in. There's one here, 2 up here in the front for the white LEDs, and then there's also one here and one here for the red LEDs. And the way the harness works for the lights is you would plug the white into one side, the red into the other side, and then this gets plugged into the receiver. And now the main issue that I may see that I'm gonna have to face is that there's not really a lot of room to run the wires. I think I'm gonna have this control module sit right here in the second servo spot, or another possible thing that I can do is just run all the wires to this battery tray, because this one we never use, we always use the other side, and then I may just be able to tuck all the excess wires in there. So I think that's what I'm gonna do first, see if that works, but I'm not gonna bore you guys with wiring all the lights. I'm just gonna show you what I'm gonna do for the bumpers. But let's go ahead and do the rear one first, because that one is just going to be 2 bolts and it's going to be super easy. So there's a bolt right here we need to take out, and one also right here. And once those are out, we can just pull the old bumper off, and you can see a size comparison. It's about double the size, the new bumper. Plus it has those light buckets, which is pretty cool. Then we just line up all the holes. Okay, what I'm noticing is that it's not a perfect fit. The top of the bumper kind of rubs on the wing mount, so what we can do is either just force it on because all the holes line up, or I could be smart and trim the top of the bumper. But you know what? I'm not smart, so we're just gonna try to force it on first and see what happens. Just gonna get one side started and then get the other side threaded in. Just go back and forth here until it's all the way tight. Alright, so the rear bumper's on. It's not perfectly straight up and down, but it looks fine to me, so we're just gonna leave it at that. No trimming is necessary, but for some reason it's only this side touching, this side is not. So maybe just the mount is crooked. But yeah, that looks good. And now let's move on to the front bumper, which is going to be a little bit more complicated. So just like the rear bumper, it's 2 bolts right here. I'm going to pull off the front bumper, set that off to the side. And another quick comparison, just the size differences there. It's going to offer a lot more protection with the Summit bumper. And yeah, overall just looks better in my opinion. So if I were to just throw the body on here, you can see there's a cutout right there for the stock bumper. And yeah, that just looks ridiculous. So definitely going to have to drill some new holes and drop it down. And to do that, it looks like I'm definitely gonna have to cut out this centerpiece, but that could be as simple as using body scissors. I could probably go in there a little bit more and just smooth it out with a Dremel, which I may do, but now we can get an idea for how much we need to cut. So I'm definitely gonna have to trim this bottom skid plate, so I'm just gonna take it off so then it's out of the way for now, so then I could line up the bumper, and then this will be the last thing we do, is trimming that down a little bit. So the skid plate is just 5 screws. There's 4 right here and then 1 right here. Now I can pull off the skid plate, and now we want to make sure these A-arm pins don't fall out because they could be really loose. It doesn't feel like any of these ones are, so I just want to pay attention to those and not shake the car around too much. And now we have complete visibility to what we need to trim on this front bumper to get it to fit. Now just off the bat, I'm gonna have to add some sort of spacer when I drill the holes for the new bolt holes, because I can't even get this back edge of the bumper right here to touch the mount just because it rubs against the body, and I'm not going to trim the body at all. So a spacer is definitely going to be needed. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that yet, but I think that right now we can actually start drilling the holes. Now I want it to be as low as possible because I think the lower it looks, the better it is. The lowest that I can go is about right there, it looks like. So pretty much I can go to this top edge is the highest. So what I'm gonna do is mark 2 holes just straight up from the existing bolt holes right there and right there. It's gonna be straight up from those. I'm honestly just gonna eyeball it. I got another Summit bumper laying around if I mess it up, but it looks like right there is good. Don't want it to be all the way up there. This one might be a little bit off to the left, so I'm just gonna have to keep that in mind when I'm drilling that hole. We'll maybe make another little mark just right there. That looks a little bit better. And then we want the other one to be straight up from this hole and then as parallel with this little mark as much as possible. Maybe right there. That looks pretty good to me. Now we're gonna grab the drill and drill some holes. Gonna be using a 3/32 drill bit because that's pretty similar to the size of the bolts that we're gonna be using for the bumper. Now I would prefer to drill in from the front so then there's a clean edge up here and then like the tearing of the plastic is gonna be back here. So I'm just gonna exaggerate these holes a little bit more and maybe get a little perforation on the front edge so I can see where the hole is gonna be. So you can see that right there, how it starts poking out. So that's where the first hole is gonna be. Now I gotta do the same thing on this side. And that's good right there. So those are our 2 holes. And now I'm just gonna push these in so then it's not a rounded edge because that's gonna be very hard to drill into. I mean, even just lining up the body reamer on these is pretty difficult because they're shaped upwards instead of recessed into the plastic. Perfect, now we can drill from the front side. And there's 2. So we got the holes drilled. Looks pretty decent, I would say. It's not super accurate by any means, but it's good enough for our use. So now we need to figure out a spacer because it just doesn't touch. I need the mount to touch those 2 holes, and that just doesn't happen without trimming the body more, which I don't really want to do. So we're gonna have to come up with some sort of spacer. Well, I was just completely going out on a whim, but I just threw the front bumper in here for the E-Revo, the stock front bumper, and it fits. And I think that's gonna work, so I might just be able to use that. A little bit of retrofitting going on here. So we're gonna put the bolts into the Summit bumper, thread them in a little bit. I may need to use longer bolts. We're gonna see. I'm just gonna put 1 in to see what the tolerances are like. I may have to do a little bit of trimming on this E-Revo bumper. And I am gonna need a longer bolt. It's just barely sticking out. But I do think that that is going to work. So I'm gonna have to trim basically this little ear part off and then same thing over here. May have to trim some of the top as well, and I think that's about it. So let's break out the Dremel and get to cutting. Alright, so I'm going to be using a cutting wheel for this, and I'm just going to cut that off, and then I'm going to cut it right there, and we'll start with that, see what it's like. Gonna take these burned edges off, and that looks pretty decent. So let's just line this up and get the E-Revo and see how this looks. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get longer bolts to really test this. So I'm gonna take this one out and find a longer one. Alright, so I found these 2 longer bolts right here. Let's see if they're gonna work. I did some very accurate eyeball measuring, so I think that they will, but let's see. So we got that one all the way in. Let's line up the bumper from the E-Revo. I might have to drill that out a little bit. I don't feel like threading the whole screw through it. No. Alright, well, we're just gonna have to thread the screw through it. I don't feel like finding another drill bit. Seems like all we can go. Now let's see if that fits in there, which it should. Yeah, I think that's gonna work perfect. Let's get the other side in now. Start this thread. Alright, so I got both of those in. Now, let's line it up with the bumper mount on the E-Revo. Tighten them down. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of one and then a little bit of the other. I think the screws that I picked are a little bit thicker than the stock ones, so I'm gonna have to get new threads started. So we got that one started a little bit. We're gonna go to this one. Can't tell if it's going in or not. Yeah, it is. Oh, that's fantastic. Bolt is stripped. It's not all the way stripped, but I'm gonna have to replace it. So now I just gotta go nice and slow. Dang it, dude. This is gonna be a long time. You know what, I felt that it was stripped too when I put it in, and I just didn't do anything with it. That's my bad. It also doesn't help that this driver is also pretty wore down, and I need a new one. I've needed a new one for like a year, but yeah, that's a lot better already. So I'm just gonna use this for this one. It's gonna take a little bit longer, but at least I won't have to redo the whole thing if I use this L-wrench. And then for this side, I'll use this one. And just go back and forth so that it's not cross-threaded. I don't know how far I'm gonna go. Let's try that. They're not all the way in. As you can see, you can still see the threads. Actually, I could probably back this one off a little bit. It's a little bit further in. All right, let's see how that sits. Gotta put the rear of the body on first and then pop the front in. That looks perfect. Awesome, so that looks really good in my opinion. So what I'm gonna do now, guys, is install the lights right here. I'll show you how to install install them into the actual light buckets. It's super simple, but I'm going to wire them off camera and then show you how I wired them, so then you guys can do that too if you're following along. But it's going to be a little bit of a trial and error first for me, so I'm just going to show you guys the final product after I get this plug out. Jeez. There we go. So yeah, I'm just going to show you guys the final product after I show you how to pop these lights into place. So like I said earlier, there's 2 buckets up here and then 1 right here on each side for the front bumper. And you just take your light and pop it in until you hear it click. And that's it. If you can pull on it and it doesn't move, you got it in. And that's it. That's all it takes. And you do that to the other 3 up there. And then same thing back here with the 2 in the rear bumper. So I'm going to put you guys back on when all the lights are installed and all wired up. Alright guys, so all the lights are installed on the E-Revo, and it took me literally all day because there were a lot of issues that I faced. So first of all, I'm just going to go over how I wired everything. We got the front here, all the wires come together kind of in this area just laying there, and I got a zip tie right here going to inside the vent. Right there, you can see the white and black wire goes in there, and then if I open this up, you can see I just have everything tucked in here, and the white and black wire is plugged into this main control unit, and then we got the rear tail lights right here, and then on each side of those, they are routed right here, and then there's a zip tie on the wing mount right there, then it comes under the body mount right there. If I move these out of the way, you can just see that they're all just laying here, and through the rear vent right here for the battery tray on the right side of the vehicle. And then of course it's just plugged into this side of the control unit. And then this main wire for the control unit that comes out right here comes out the battery tray and is routed underneath the motor and of course into the receiver box plugged into channel 3. Now the first issue that I faced was I couldn't get all the lights to work when they were plugged into the control module right here. And then later I found out that the negative wire was actually a little bit loose, so I added some solder to it and it's fine now. But I don't think that was the main issue because it was still attached, it just was about to fall off, so I fixed that. But I think the main issue was that I didn't realize that the front had to be plugged in on this side and the rear had to be plugged in on this side with the main power cord coming out, because if you reverse the two, only the red LEDs will light up. But basically if you install this axial light kit in your E-Revo, make sure you have these on the same side, and if you notice that one of them isn't working with them plugged into the right side, check these little white connectors right here. Mine on this side was loose. For whatever reason, it would only work if it was in a very, very specific position. Like you would just tap it barely and it just shut off. So I just super glued the whole connector in. As you can see there, it's not going anywhere now. So yeah, it may not be the most practical for like trying to remove it, but if I have to, I'm just gonna cut the wire and solder it again. So to me, it's fine, but that's really everything. And of course, just all the excess wires get tucked into this side of the battery tray because we don't use this side. And the reason being that we don't use this side and we use the other side is because when you plug in your battery, I'll plug mine in so I could also show you guys the lights, but when we plug in our battery, what we do is we have this rubber band for around the balance port so it doesn't get caught in the suspension components, and then we put it in here with the wires facing towards the back, close the battery tray. And the differences between each side of the battery tray is with this side under the receiver box, the cables sit nice and neat in the back here and they don't get caught in the suspension, whereas if you have the battery sitting over here, there's a ton of cable right here, right by this A-arm, right by the drive shaft, right by the shocks, and it's not practical whatsoever. So that's why we keep the battery on this side as opposed to under the ESC, and that's why I'm fine with putting all the excess wires and that control module right in there. So now I'm going to turn on the remote, power on the car so you guys can see the lights. I'm going to put the body on for aesthetics, and there's the front LEDs. They are pretty bright and it looks really good too, in my opinion. It's just more of an aggressive look. And then here is the back right there, not as bright, but they still get the job done and it looks pretty good in my opinion. And another thing that I did to the front, more so just to get everything to sit better, was I trimmed the body more right on this front edge because it was pushing against the wires. And then I also raised the body post up 1 notch just because again it was hitting the wires and I didn't like the way everything fit together, and now it's perfect in my opinion, so should have no issues with any wires being yanked out of the lights on a crash. So now the only thing that we have to do is reinstall this skid plate, and as you guys can tell, it just won't fit on. It's too long right on this top part with the Summit bumper on, and it dropped down like I did, so I'm gonna have to cut a little bit off of that, which is no big deal, so then we could get proper clearance. So just looking at it a little bit more, I think I'm gonna be able to cut it right above the TRX logo, just at the very top edge, and I think if I cut it at that top edge, it's gonna be enough clearance for the the rest of the skid plate to fit in properly. Alright, so I sanded it just above the TRX logo right there, and let's see if it fits. Looks like I'm gonna have to go a little bit more if I want it to fit better. Yeah, let's try going halfway down the TRX logo now, kind of by the top half of the R. Alright, I ended up leaving it right there, so now let's see if that one works, which it should. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. Fits pretty close to how it was with the E-Revo bumper too, which I like. There's just a very small gap right there. So the last thing that we gotta do is put these 5 bolts back in. Alright guys, so all the lights are officially installed on the E-Revo along with the Summit front bumper and the rear bumper. This is probably up there with one of my favorite upgrades that we've done to this thing, aside from pretty much all the other upgrades with the J-Concepts body, the Summit tires, RPM red arms, and then also the red aluminum hub carriers, which you may not really be able to see in there, that we installed in the last video right up here. I mean, even just down to the detail where I had to cut out the body for the big motor to fit in. It's just overall becoming a pretty clean build, whereas before it really was just put together. It always broke a lot, and it's becoming something a lot more than that. I think that all the like very customized details with retrofitting the Summit bumpers, the tires, and then even the motor to fit with the slammed body, it's just something that looks unique in my opinion, and I'm starting to really like this thing just for how it looks. I don't really care how it drives at this point. It looks good, and that's all that matters. Well, it would be nice if it was more durable, but I'll take what I can get, and it really is a cool looking RC now. God, I can't get over how good that Summit bumper looks. Just looks so good in person. It fits the body lines perfectly, and the rear bumper too. I like the full width of it, even though it's crooked. I don't really care about that. It looks clapped, and it looks unique. And yeah, this thing is pretty cool. We're gonna have to make a few more running videos with it, just to see what all these new parts look like in action. And I should probably show you guys what they look like with all the lights off, so I'm just gonna shine them against the pegboard here. So that's right at the edge of the bench, probably 1.5 feet, and that's probably 5 feet away, and it still shines everything. Now let's see how far it is at about roughly 15 feet. Still shining everywhere. Yeah, these things are pretty cool and crazy bright. Look at that. The rear ones aren't all that much. They're basically a marker light, but still looks pretty cool. This thing looks menacing at night too. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave it a like, share it with others so I can grow my channel. And if you know anyone with a 1/16 E-Revo, send them this video. Let's try to get a ton of E-Revos with the Summit bumper and the Summit tires. I think it's a pretty impressive look. It looks better than stock for sure in my opinion. And I think that other people would find this look pretty cool and unique as well. So with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video on Trax RC. Cause aside from my soul,